Hi there, welcome. This is Christian from Geeks Anonymous, and I'm here with an updated review for the game Star Wars Armada, now that we're post Wave 2. Now, when this game first got released, it's fair to say that there was a few problems, mainly because the core set had some issues. The first of these was the fact that in the core set, you didn't really get very much. There was one Imperial ship and a few squadrons, plus two Rebel ships and a few squadrons. So there really wasn't much to play with. In fact, to get a decent game initially, you kind of needed to have at least two core sets to really see the system in action. Now, in conclusion from the first video, I quite liked the system. The system showed some real promise. There was lots and lots of fluff in the game, lots and lots of great flavour. It felt very movie-esque. However, the lack of ships was a real problem. And the other big issue with the game's release was the fact that the Wave 1 ships, which were originally going to ship with the core set, didn't get manufactured in time. And it was almost 4 months before they even hit the shelves. And when they hit the shelves, I think it's also fair to say that they were a little underwhelming from what we were looking forward to. Largely because the main ships that were in that Wave 1 were actually what we had already seen in the core set. Plus, we got the assault frigate for the Rebels, which was a cool ship, and the Gladiator class Star Destroyer, which was another really cool ship, another small based ship. So there wasn't really a lot of really exciting stuff in Wave 1, plus a bunch of various squadrons and so on. Hence, I kind of left off updating the review as I had planned on doing after Wave 1 and those ships initially hit. So, fast forwarding a little bit, and we got Wave 2. Wave 2 needed to deliver some juicy things, otherwise I was pretty much going to write this game off. And Fantasy Flight gave us probably the most iconic ship in the Star Wars universe. We got the Imperial Star Destroyer, the great flying pizza wedge. So, what happened then was we also got the Home 1 Destroyer frigate. So we had two great big ships now to play with. These were large based ships. And not only that, and most exciting for me, was we got an expansion called Rogues and Villains. And in this, some of the more iconic characters of the game came to be involved in it. So we saw things like Han Solo, Boba Fett, Dengar, IG-88, Bossk, loads of cool bounty hunters. And what we also saw was that normally the squadrons were sort of representing more of a bunch of ships, but these ones being slightly larger ships, especially like the marvellous Millennium Falcon, were just single ships represented by the squadron stand. So really much more exciting units in Wave 2, and that's when we decided to, hey, let's give this another go and see if there really is legs in this game. So we bought the Rogues and Villains expansion pack. We bought the Raider Corvette, although we haven't had a chance to play with that yet. We got the Gladiator class Star Destroyer, although that's Wave 1. We got an assault frigate, that's also Wave 1, but of course we hadn't played with those just yet. And loads more squadrons. So we had access to the TIE Advanced and the Interceptors and the A-Wings and the B-Wings and all the cool stuff. So we then made a 300 point list and we chucked it on the table. And we then proceeded to have one of my most enjoyable tabletop gaming experiences in recent years. It really was. It was just brilliant from the get-go. My opponent, Danny, who was playing the Rebels, his A-Wings shot out and engaged my great big ball of bombers that I'd put together, kept the whole of my bomber wing in situ. They couldn't go off and attack his Corvette, which was starting to flank around my big Star Destroyer, and then IG-88, one of the new Rogues and Villains from that pack, saved the day, clearing out the A-Wings and allowing my bombers to go off and start attacking what they needed to attack. From there, IG-88 then proceeded to engage a massive load of his squadrons and keep them in place, just like his A-Wings had done to my bomber wing. My Gladiator streaked across the battlefield, It's a fast, light ship, but it's a bit of a glass cannon. It does lots and lots of damage, and it then crashed into his Nebulan B frigate, did huge amounts of damage, pretty much crippling it. And as I was the player with initiative, I was able to finish off at the start of the next turn. He then did a late game rally, and my Star Destroyer was right down to its last couple of hull points, and he had it about to be finished off with 2 B-wings going into the rear with no shields on it, and I had one lone TIE Advanced who flew in there with its escort ability, distracted those B-wings just long enough for the Star Destroyer to survive to the end of the game. And it was a game, there's lots of other little bits and pieces that we could put in, or I could tell you stories of, just from that one game. And that's, again, really where this game wins. The movie-esque elements of this are shot through, all the way through, whether it's the various abilities that the individual units have that are so evocative of what the characters or the units that you'd expect them to be like, that we see in the movies, or how they act, or how they fly, or whatever. So masses and masses of fluff. That was one of the big things I picked up on after just playing with the core set, and I'm happy to say that now, after having played with quite a few extra bits and pieces, and there's still lots more for us to play with, the level of flavour and movie being played out in front of you has just they've really got this right, guys. This is the win with this game. Now, there were some issues originally as well with the system. It felt a little bit constricted sometimes when you were trying to put the movement marker down, and sometimes you'd be trying to go over squadrons and things like that, and it could kind of feel a bit congested and a bit annoying, and where are these going to move to? Completely overcome. The game is now meant to be played on a 6x3 board, so it's really much less of an issue having congestion, because generally, also as well as we've played more games and our sort of tactical awareness and understanding of the system has expanded, the movement has become, we've developed a little bit more finesse over it, and that whole clumping together on a 3x3 board and kind of getting in each other's way, we've started to work our way around that now, just in the last 2 games that we've played. So it really feels like that's been overcome. And actually, I think the more play, we've got used to what happens when a ship overlaps and how the squadrons just get displaced, and actually just started to use that to our tactical advantage, since you can place bombers in such a manner that you know that that ship is going to have to move. It's got that space drift of a big ship. It can't just stop and turn on a sixpence, and you know whether it's going to displace your squadron, and you can use that to then get in behind it. So it's got a lovely airborne flow to it now that we've started to really work out the system. Okay, so you can sense that I'm really enjoying it. There were some other things that I really wanted to point out why we enjoy this game so much. And the first one is that it's the fact that we've got almost 2 arenas of battle being played out in front of us. We have the squadron battle, and we have the capital ship battle. And they both impact on one another, but they genuinely do feel like 2 different battles that are happening. So for instance, I've never seen another game do this quite so well. I've played other games where we've had big ships and ordnance. Battlefleet Gothic would be a classic example of that, of a game that was great fun. I loved that back in the 90s. But really, how it dealt with squadrons or ordnance is much less detailed than we get in Armada, and yet the speed of the game is still just as quick with Armada. So it's really testament to the system that we can have this going on. But there's just so much excitement. I talked about IG-88 acting tremendously heroically in how he engaged units and cleared things out. And a large part of this is due to lots of the new abilities that the units have. Things that really make them very exciting to use. If you haven't got experience of the system, they might not mean so much to you, but normally squadrons could only move or shoot in their phase unless they were activated by a big capital ship, which is a a big drain on your logistics because you've got to use up your commands to do it, and commands are precious within the game. But if you've got access to rogue characters, well, they can move and shoot completely independently, and that makes them really, really very powerful. And the knock-on effect of that is that the tactics and the strategies that you can use and employ to engage other squadrons or defend your own squadrons from your opponent's squadrons are massive. So really, really exciting. Combos. This game is full of combos. I've always loved War Machine and Malifaux for the sheer number of combinations you can put together and the synergies between different units and their abilities. This game is absolutely full of them as well. For instance, I had a ship that you can give your ships upgrades. So you can upgrade your ships however you like, but there's not just upgrades, you can also put officers on there, and there are generals and all sorts of things that you can put on your ships to make them more powerful or change up their abilities. I had one ship that had an overload pulse on it, which meant that if you managed to roll a critical hit on a die, well then you'd wipe out or exhaust your opponent's defense tokens, making it much more difficult for them to cancel out your hits. Now that alone is really cool when you then think about setting up that ship for more damage in the rest of the turn. But when you combine that with, say, your admiral, who can give you the ability to spend a die to change a die face to a critical, you then start seeing that's great synergy with that upgrade of the overload pulse. And so we have all these great synergies going on, which again make putting a list together, putting it on a table, playing it out, and seeing it all come together beautifully, that much more satisfying. And if you're a miniature war gamer of any variety, you'll know that satisfaction that comes about through doing that. The commands, that is still a brilliant system. The command and the command dials, or whether it's the command tokens and how you can stack them up, and again the various tactical options that then opens up for you, they're really far and wide ranging throughout the game. And another aspect of why this system is so good and so clever. So in conclusion then, this game got a rough start, and I think that has impacted how popular it is. X-Wing has been considerably more popular than Armada, and I don't think that it necessarily needed to be. I think part of the reason for that is people had a bad experience with the core set and then wanted to sell it off and probably just never bothered with touching it again. However, for those of you who've still held on to it in hope that it would get better in the future, you've done well, I think, because there's plenty in the game now to get really excited about with this. The Wave 1 releases, whilst they weren't brilliant in terms of excitement and flair, they're really solid in terms of the tactical and strategic elements that they will add to your forces. The Wave 2 ones are really exciting, of course, with the great big ships or the rogues and the villains, and again they'll add masses of depth to your strategic and tactical play with this game. And I think that's probably where I'll land on. The flavour is off the scale with this game, but now the tactical and strategic play that is available in this is almost second to none, and that's largely because it feels like you're almost wrestling with two different arenas of battle with the squadrons and the ships, and adding that together means that it feels like the tactical play that is available to explore the real depth of the game and the system and the units and their myriad abilities really mean that it's tremendously exciting. I probably sound like I'm absolutely frothing about it and I'm a complete fanboy of it, and that's simply because after a rough start with quite high hopes and feeling like it was a good system but there just wasn't really anything there to back it up, thankfully after Wave 2 FFG have really delivered on this one, and I think this is a game that would only go from strength to strength, and I heartily recommend that you get involved. Brilliant, thumbs up.